Yeah, I don't care. That, no, we
We
walk.
thought
No,
right up here.
We walk.
I
I think we better keep 6 feet in there, just in case. No, you can move on. No, seriously, you can move on. That's just what it's. Now, I'm upset. I thought after my pep talk.
He was like, see ya. See ya. I said,
He's
you
watching
walk?
the
I said,
weather.
no, yes, he is. He's always watching.
Yeah, well, that's.
He has the radar thing. He's got a bigger.
You know,
He bought a bigger computer. It's the screen is this big. I like every time I didn't use it. I used it a lot.
Yeah.
I'm busy to use it. This
That's what Jack said.
all the time. As long as you get what you want.
Exactly.
But anyway, I said, can you walk me to the door? Oh. Very big.
Danny and Mark walk me to the door. Kiss me.
Which one was white nice? Actually, I was
I know, he always does.
So, you know, my wife.
Yes, yes.
So, every morning.
Oh no, that's all we do.
Yeah, it drives her. John Canale calls me about 1.
I'm not gonna tell you. I can't.
If you can do that, Mary, then I'm gonna be here with you, because John's supposed to call me, and then I call him. Yeah.
I don't know what happened to me.
Cold and sick.
You know, I shouldn't say it.
It's just that time of year.
I don't.
It drives him crazy too.
Yeah.
Yeah. It drives him. Well, and it doesn't help. I'm like,
So in our house, this is what I do. In our house, this is what I do. I hate you. It's your fault I have to go to work early. It's not my fault, it's our fault. But yeah,
Jesse was, oh, looks like you're going.
no, it's always trying to do it.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Steve Thalheimer, Superintendent of Elkhart Community Schools, and thank you for coming this evening for us to share with you information regarding a proposal for repurposing Hawthorne Elementary School as a way for us to best utilize our facilities and take care of our human resources and ensure student success. One of the questions that people have asked is, why are we looking at this now? What is this urgency in looking at this? And really it's driven by three factors. One is that we have a concern for the declining enrollment within the district that we have been experiencing over years and has been exacerbated or made more severe over the time of the pandemic. The second one is, how do we best use our financial resources and utilize our buildings best for the benefit of students? And third, staffing challenges across many job classifications within our district have made it to really be analyzing how we're stretching our staffs and are we best utilizing our staff if we are trying to man and fill buildings with staff that we may not need to. So that has led to us having a conversation about repurposing Hawthorne Elementary School into a center that would be focused on preschool education, pre-K education, and a community resource hub to support families in their students' educational journey. The main points of the proposal that I have presented to the board, and we presented at the end of January in the board meeting, would be that we would move K through 6 students from Hawthorne Elementary into other schools and realign staff to meet where those students have been located. The second piece would be is that the back portion, and Mr. Gianesi here in a moment that I'll hand this over to, will explain a little bit more about the layout of the building, but in the back portions of Hawthorne Elementary, newer portions of that building, we would relocate our current preschool, pre-K classrooms there and potentially expand pre-K offerings as we look at partnerships or other programs. The third piece would be to provide a community hub of resources there, including our Student Services Center, perhaps a community-based clinic for physical and mental health, other community partners to utilize other parts of the building. And then the fourth piece would be for us to issue a request for proposal or to ask a firm or a contracting firm to provide us with a demographic and feasibility study. And what a demographic and feasibility study does is it looks at, from the demographic standpoint, population trends, what's happening with growth within the school district and the county regarding population and numbers of potential students. The feasibility study looks at what are the capacities of our school buildings, how much are they being utilized, what needs to happen for various programs. So our feasibility study would then look at population trends over the next decade, building utilization more broadly across the district. Might we need to redistrict or look at rearranging how our buildings are utilized in the consolidation of schools? And what would happen maybe if we would look at the change of grade configurations? So there has been conversation about potentially moving 6th graders to the middle schools, those kind of things. So that study would help us analyze and look at all of that. Before I go into the rationale for things, I wanted to make sure that I introduce the staff members from the administration that are here with me and school board members. So to my right is Tony Gianesi, our Chief Operating Officer, and he'll come up in a moment and talk to you about the layout of the building as we look at it more closely. To my left is Dr. Brad Shepard, who's our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction. To his left is Dr. Mindy Higginson, who is our Director of Elementary Education. Beth Williams is to her left, and Beth is our Director of Federal Programs. And at the end of the table is Sarita Stevens, our Assistant Superintendent for Student Services. Also here this evening are board members, Mr. Doug Weaver and Ms. Ann Vandervallen, who are here with us as well. So the rationale for this plan is, one of the major driving factors is the issue of cost and the use of the facilities. And as we look at building renovations upon the Hawthorne to use it as a K-6 building, for the age of portions of the building that Tony will explain here in a moment, it doesn't make financial sense for us to continue to do that. Parts of the building can be used and would require less work for us to do that, but as we look overall, that has been one of our main considerations. In the fall, the Board of School Trustees had looked at a resolution for improvements to Monger, Daly, and to Hawthorne. And as part of the review about issuing bonds and looking at that kind of work, that has led us to this recommendation. The oldest portion of Hawthorne is from 1929, and the mechanicals and repairs upon the building have begun to accumulate to where this has been the administration's recommendation. At this point, I'll hand it over to Tony so he can talk a little bit about what's been done at Hawthorne and share the layout of the building.
Thank you, Dr. Thalheimer. So as Dr. Thalheimer mentioned, the original building was constructed in 1929. I mentioned last night, in doing a little digging, we found out it was built for $160,000, which was a lot of money at that time. We see on this slide, now I'll go jump back and forth, that, that the original section is here in yellow. Down at the bottom, it's actually a two-story portion of the building. In 1955, we constructed a two-story addition with 4 classrooms. In 1965, we constructed this one-story addition comprised of 6 classrooms and restrooms. In 1980, we constructed the new gym and the classrooms and restrooms in this area. And by the way, one of the speakers last night was talking about the renovation that occurred in the library and how great it was. The library is actually here, Media Center, and that was the original gymnasium. That's what they did as they added on to the building to renovate. And then you can see in 1994, an additional cluster of one-story cluster of kindergarten classrooms was added. In 2004, cafeteria and classrooms. Were added that wrap around the back of the building. And in terms of the proposal, what we're proposing to do is take the area in blue, which is the 2003 edition, the area that's in pinkish purple here, that's the 80 edition, and the area in the pinkish purple here, that's a 94 edition, and turn this back area into the pre-K center. That would leave the 29, 55, and 65 sections for our community partners and our own services that we've discussed. So many people have said we have not done enough at Hawthorne. We could do more. I was noticing as I was sitting here, because I was the director of building services for 11 years, that every single backboard is missing a portion of the foam or it's dangling down, and that is something that we need to address here. But it's an example of the types of things, because of property tax caps and the effect on our capital projects budget, that we haven't been able to do some of the things in any building. This is a perfect example of things that have not been done here. So Hawthorne, when it's suggested, it hasn't been attended to. As you can see from this slide, and actually this slide, because in 2015, we went into the 1929, 1955, and 1965 editions, and we worked with the principal and the staff to provide new carpet, new paint, new casework, new flooring. And so that was the most recent renovation in terms of what everyone sees. And in 2016, we replaced the boilers. So work has been done there, and it's been consistent with what's been done throughout the district. The other thing I'd like to note is, since 1980, we've touched every building, and we have I call it the construction history log. There are many buildings that actually have not been touched for 25 years. Oslo, which was opened in 91 as a brand new building, has only seen safety and security upgrades in the time that I've been here. Eastwood, Cleveland, Feezer were renovated in the mid-90s. They've not been touched. Beardsley, which I failed to mention last night, we actually did an addition in 2017, but it was a partnership with the Boys and Girls Club, and I didn't want to leave that out tonight. We did that work. We did work at Pinewood, Beardsley, Woodland in 2015, and that was part of the safety and security referendum. And we actually removed the offices, which were centrally located in the building, so they were a security concern because people would enter the building and walk through the building to get to the office. We did small additions and renovations to those buildings to address the security needs. Roosevelt was opened in '06. This was opened in '02 or '03. I always get that confused, even though it says '02. In '08, we did a major renovation addition to Pinewood. In '07, we did a major renovation and addition to Riverview. But we really haven't neglected any building because we wanted to. We've done what we could do, especially in light of the tax caps, which have been in place almost the entire time I've been here. And I started in 2006. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Thalheimer.
Thank you, Tony. So as indicated here on the slide, when we look at the property tax caps that again cap the amount that property owners pay on their property tax bill that impacts our ability to pay our debt, to do our transportation, and to take care of our facilities, those caps, or the money that's not collected, has amounted to roughly 4 to 4.5, even as much as $4.9 million. So that impacts all of those other funds and the ability to do that. So our folks and Tony and Bill and everybody have done a fantastic job as much as they can given that. But again, with the limits on what we're collecting, that has had us do maybe not everything that we would have liked to have done. So that then lands us at a place for a choice about what we do for the improvements. So as we look at Hawthorne and the wish list of things that people would like to have done, the things that we know need to be done, when we put that together, we come up a little bit shy of $5 million, which would require us to put a bond forward, which is like a mini mortgage, that we would be able to collect that, have that loan to do that work, but then we would need to repay that over a term of 20 years. And the question is, do we take out that kind of bond and borrowing in order to then pay it back over 20 years? And is that necessary on a building that's 100 years old and considering our enrollment within the district? So then that leaves us with the other alternative, that if we look at just using the newer portions of the building and investing there, then in terms of that for preschool, we could spend much less and pay that back over a shorter period of time and be able to utilize that in order for us to have a location to centralize and keep our pre-K centralized, moving it from here to that building, in addition to potentially adding other pre-K or pre-K perhaps like our PACE program. So then that would leave the front part of Hawthorne as a place for a community resource hub and something that would be utilized for our student services. So at this point, if I could have Sarita come over and maybe share with us what that student services piece would look like, what that means for families, and what some of those community partners could be involved with.
Thank you, Dr. Thalheimer. We have been working with many community agencies that have always asked us, what can we do for the district? How can we help? How can we help families? But there's never been a complete collaboration on how to centralize that and how to actually get that done. So we do have agencies that's specifically interested in the South Side. And these are agencies that could help create a better educational environment for children. And this is how. A lot of families do not have access to things like immediate access to things like immunizations. When we talk about mental health interventions, we're not talking about for adults. We're talking about school-age children that fall into dysregulation. And so the ongoing help during their developmental stage can either reverse what's happening to them or help them cope with it. So having those kind of agencies within the building as a community hub, which is an innovative approach for any urban district. Elkhart is very well positioned for that because there are so many agencies that want to collaborate and help. The partnership even with the city and Tolson to not duplicate services and to work together for services like parent training, English learning, things like that. Those collaborations are vital when you want to get comprehensive grants. So putting our resources together to create a student that is ready to learn, a student that has all of their foundational needs met, security, home. Also, I don't know if you're familiar with McKinney-Vento, helping homeless families or helping students. So creating those foundational things through a community hub will help enrich the educational opportunities for students that are in certain social economical statuses. So that creates a student that is ready to learn. So this is our opportunity as a community to bring all of our community resources together because they are out there and ready to help the Elkhart schools and be a true collaboration for creating academic excellence, because the target is creating a better achieving student or academic excellence and laying the foundation so all students can have access to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarita. The next piece that we've been looking at is what's happening with our trends in enrollment and the space that's available. So as we look at this, the possibility of moving the students from that oldest building in the district into the two newest elementaries in the district, as well as Mary Daly and Monger schools, which would be receiving updates and improvements this coming year. So the next slide has information in it regarding the trends in our enrollment. So if we start over here and look at Mary Beck, back in 2016, 2017, it was a full K-6 building and had some sections of pre-K. And then the building was reconfigured to become smaller in the K-6 space and have more pre-K located within it. That has proved some challenges for the Beck staff in that it has fewer sections and the ability to collaborate and be able to best meet student needs. And so over that time, their enrollment has been fairly consistent, but it has resulted in limited class sizes. At Daly, we can see that they were in 16-17 with 575 students, and now there are 150 students fewer than that. Hawthorne was 414 back at that time period and is now about 510 and has grown 100 students over that time, down from some high water marks a couple years ago. And then Roosevelt's 583 and is down to 470. And as we've had these conversations, people have said, well, you're taking some buildings that are full now, or you're taking buildings with large class sizes now, and you're going to combine them together. One of the things that we want to make sure that people understand is the buildings are not full. The issue that we're facing is that we have some larger class sizes because it's an issue related to space. So we can have many more students in these buildings, and I inserted in here these capacity numbers. So Beck, when we look at the capacity, can hold up to 640 students. Daly can hold up to 680. Roosevelt can hold up to 820. And you can see that we're far below those numbers. So when we go to distribute Hawthorne students into these other buildings, we have ample room to be able to take those students and move them there. And then if staff moves with them, that provides us the flexibility to be able to start addressing classroom size issues, class load issues that we have there. Just to provide some perspective at the bottom as well, is that over this time period of the past decade, you can see that district enrollment has dropped a little over 900 students. And if we're looking roughly at about $6,500 a student in that estimate, that takes us to nearly $6 million that we are less than what we were bringing in 10 years ago. And obviously students are more than just a dollar sign. But when we look at making the whole district work, when we have to look at the whole district and the finances of the district, one of the things that we have to consider is that operating on $6 million less in our education fund and in the support parts of our operations fund, we have to make some choices. And that's where we're looking at this proposal. The next piece is when we look at pre-K. And so if students were brought here to develop more K through 6 sections, then The pre-K program that's here would need to be relocated. So again, that's where on the map, the blue and purple portions would be utilized for that. And there are rooms available in those spaces that can do that, that can accommodate Hawthorne's 2 pre-K classrooms that are already there, a pre-K classroom from Title I that's here, and Head Start classrooms. And then conversations that we've been having have also been, might those Head Start classrooms grow? Might we look at more Title I classrooms? What would happen if we'd be truly inclusive and bring our PACE preschool classrooms over so that as students are developmentally ready to experience a regular pre-K setting rather than a contained pre-K setting like they're experiencing at PACE, how could that work as well? So all of those are considerations for utilizing the newer parts of Hawthorne. The final part is related to looking at things more broadly. What we would do at Hawthorne would really be a phase 1 of addressing the immediate needs that have arisen, especially over the last year, as we've looked at the financial situation, we've seen enrollment, and we're looking at our staffing issues. So as we look at the next phase of what would happen, we would put out a request for proposal, asking a company that does this kind of work, or a researcher, or a team of former school officials that might do this kind of work, to say, what is going to be the potential job growth? What's going to be happening in housing? What kind of trends are going to be there in terms of migration or maybe students moving in and out of the area? And given all of that information, what does that mean and what kind of predictions can we make with some confidence to then look at what's going on in our buildings? Truly, how are they being used? What's the standard by which you judge a building? How much margin for growth should you leave in a building? How much empty capacity might you leave in a building? So all of those questions from outside experts to help us provide all of that data so that then we can look at what would need to be happening next. The numbers of open capacity, like we saw on this chart, we're seeing open capacity like that within other buildings within our district. So we do need to look at those and make sure that we're utilizing those resources fully, and again, helping consolidate and ensure that every classroom has a qualified, certified teacher to instruct and take care of them. So our timeline on this is that we're using these first couple weeks of February to have these public meetings. At the February 8th board meeting, we were discussing approving a feasibility study. The board would like to do some more work on the nature of that study, and so we'll be doing more work on that over the next couple of weeks so that we can really get the scope of that correct to help set our direction for the next several years. Then we would begin discussions with those community partners in earnest. Again, several have expressed interest at various times, so now we would be going to them and saying, what if? What does this look like? What could that partnership develop to become so that there would be a permanent presence on the south side for some of our partners who are very eager to assist us? Then we would look at those redistricting boundaries and staffing needs. During the month of March, we would have staff request of us where they would like to be stationed. In April, we would finalize those boundaries and look at the impact on transportation. Again, I very much would be looking to keep that impact on transportation to as a minimum as to what we're doing and do it within the way we're currently transporting students. And then by the time we would arrive at the end of the school year in May, all students and all staff would know where they're going to be located for the beginning of the 23 school year, 22-23 school year, so there are no questions and people are not left wandering through the summertime. One of the other things that we talk about is that if we're not fully utilizing that building as a K-6 building, we do anticipate savings that would be there, and this is what we're comfortable saying at a very minimum we would experience. So there would be a principal's position that would no longer be needed in that building. That along with a secretarial position that wouldn't be needed and a part-time custodial position that we know we wouldn't need without the building being fully used, that would save $203,000. I've listed here at the bottom positions that follow students. So these are not necessarily, they're not going to be savings because we still need those staff members to go along and help with students. So the assistant principal, teachers, nurse, social worker, paraprofessionals, food service would follow those students and help because obviously we will have more students in a couple other buildings. And then from an operations standpoint, Mr. Gianesi feels pretty comfortable saying that our minimal savings in utilities as we would set higher cooling points and lower heating points and not be going in and out doors in portions of the building, is that we would see $20,000 there and an additional $10,000 in terms of equipment and supplies. So on an annual basis, we would be eliminating $230,000 to maybe closer to $500,000 or $250,000, excuse me, in expenses that we would not be incurring on a year-to-year basis. At this point, to kind of conclude and address a little bit more about the benefits to students with this, I want to hand this over to Dr. Shepard and Dr. Higginson to kind of address this why issue and to talk a little bit more about what this means directly for students and the benefits from an academic standpoint for this proposal.
Good evening. As Dr. Thalheimer has mentioned, these are the whys for the repurposing of Hawthorne Elementary School. And Dr. Higginson and I would like very much to expand, particularly on bullet point number 2.
So we currently are in a staffing crisis. We are, and it is an issue that we immediately need to address. We just cannot continue on the trajectory that we are currently situated in. On a daily basis, what really concerns me is that we have vacancies of teaching positions that are filled by short and long-term subs. And so there are students this year that have not had a certified teacher all year because they've had subs. In some cases, those subs come, every couple of weeks. And so it's just the unfortunate situation that we're in. And we know that by not having certified teachers, that our students are not receiving the education that we want them to. We want them to have certified teachers that are highly qualified, that can provide daily classroom instruction. Several nights this year, I have gotten calls from principals concerned because they'll say, tomorrow I have 15 people out, I don't have subs, what do I do? And then it comes down to trying to decide, do we close a building or do we reconfigure staff? And teachers, you're working your tails off. You're covering classes, you're not getting plan times, your specials are being taken away, and it is just hard. So my hope, I think our hope is that we just want to stabilize staff. That's one aspect of this, and we're hoping that we can do that so that we can resolve some of the staffing issues that we have and so that our students can have certified teachers and get that academic instruction that's so important. We also know that class sizes are an issue. My hands are in those numbers regularly. Looking at class sizes and working with principals to try to solve those issues. It's not easy. It's a challenge. We all know that. We all know that smaller class sizes are beneficial to learning, to addressing the social emotional needs of our students. And so if we are able to get these class sizes down, it's another benefit to doing this, to repurposing Hawthorne. So from those two standpoints, I just feel like if we can benefit our students in that way, we'll be solving some pretty serious issues that we have. Sorry.
In addition to these most immediate needs that Dr. Higginson just shared, we understand the value of teachers having the ability to work together in collaborative groups and in teams. We know from research and we know from practice both that this is really best practice when it comes to the education of children. Again, when teachers have the opportunity to work in a team, they can share the workload. It allows them more opportunity to focus on specific needs of students and hone in on those best instructional practices. We know right now with the sub situation and with smaller sections of classes in some schools, it is more difficult for this type of collaboration to take place. So we are seeking to support all of our teachers in their work, and we feel that there is a great benefit to increasing section sizes in specific buildings that will allow teachers to better collaborate with one another and meet all of the learning needs of students. In summary, we recognize that this is a very difficult time for everyone, and we want to be able to support teachers and students and the community in every way that we can. Even though we know that change at this magnitude is extremely difficult, we really do believe that there will be great benefits for our staff and, more importantly, for our students. And we know that all of our Elkhart Community Schools teachers will provide the very best education possible for our children. Dr. Thalheimer.
Thank you, Brad and Mindy. So again, the why comes down to investing millions of dollars into a building that our enrollment simply doesn't support maintaining is one of the primary considerations. Just as important, if not more important in our consideration, has been the concern for staffing that has arisen as Brad and Mindy shared. So for us to be able to consolidate classrooms, stabilize our teaching force, and have those classrooms be all led by certified, fully qualified teachers is our ultimate goal. And the third point would be is that the proud history and the tradition of Hawthorne can be maintained and live on by the fact that the building is being utilized to prepare our youngest learners and can become a place that families can utilize to help them on their educational journey with their children. And some final takeaways and some things that we've been asked. No current staff member who works at Hawthorne would not have a position with us next year. Teachers would be initially reassigned to different buildings based on their requests, and other important support positions would all either maintain at Hawthorne as needed or have the opportunity to go to other positions within the district. So no one would be losing their job in this repurposing. Second point is that given the circumstances that we're facing and the age of the building, if any of our schools were as old as 1929, located anywhere in the district, it would be the same consideration for that school. And finally, some of the things that I'm asked are, does this have anything to do with Hawthorne's letter grade or their performance? And when we're looking at this, it is not that. The drivers are our resources and our staffing issues. It has nothing to do with the staff at Hawthorne, the work they do for children, and the care and the love they have for those children in the community. At this point, I have concluded the information that we wanted to provide and share with you. At this time, we would ask if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment. You're welcome to come up to the microphone and speak. If you would just give us your name and your connection to the district or the school, and then we can answer that or just take your comments. I'll be taking some notes as people are speaking. And also would just say to you that if there's a comment or something that you'd like to make that you don't really want to make to the microphone or to the public, we'll be saying after that you're welcome to come and speak to us at the end. So.
Hi there. My name's Heather Anderson. I am a resident of the Elkhart School District, residing in Hawthorne. I did have a student finish Hawthorne last year and transition into Pierre Moran. I have a second grader as well who had to be moved out of the district because of the time change that occurred this year. I work 8:30 to 4:30, so I had no one to get him off the bus. I wanted to start by saying, I know we're talking about replacing or moving the teachers and integrating them. Is the district prepared for if these teachers move to other districts and resign?
Our hope that they would not, and the things that we're going to be doing in the transition to support their integration into those new staffs, looking at class sizes and really setting targets to set lower class sizes and considering incentives to support them going to those new buildings and creating those new cultures. Those would be things that we're all doing to support that. Ultimately, I mean, people make the decisions that they feel they need to make, and so in those instances, we would be offering those same incentives and the same things to other folks. But our ultimate goal would be, and our wish would be, is that the teachers who care about those students would travel with them and stay with them.
And if they don't, what is the district's plan for replacing those teachers? Because I keep on hearing there's a teacher shortage. There's a nationwide shortage. I have a shortage. I can't find employees. I work 80 hours a week, and that's just what it is, you know. What is the district's plan?
We would post those positions and do what we can to bring staff in.
That sounds good. I know you guys mentioned that you're looking to integrate community support. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of places like the WIC office, Faith Mission, Healthy Beginnings, Women Care Center, and the Health Department. All of them offer the ideas that you guys are coming up with that they can help support the community. I think there's a lot of outside support already in the community. I get that we're looking to, reduce costs and such, but I also don't think anybody on the board, nor myself, nor you, can relate day to day on the struggles that some of the Hawthorne parents go through. If they're moving them from Hawthorne, for instance, let's say they live west of Hawthorne and they're going to be traveling to Roosevelt. Maybe prior they had daycare arrangements on the west side of Hawthorne. I know we're looking to reduce costs, but I think we're actually passing that cost on to other parents. Although maybe $5,000 extra cost to you, me, all of you may not be that detrimental. Other parents, I think it would be a huge risk, and it would cause, that fine line of whether they're above poverty, at poverty level, or below poverty. Are you guys aware of that? Like the median income in that section or at that school? I mean, I would say the median income is probably $20,000 to $25,000.
We're aware of the situation and know the number of families that have applied for benefits. We know what's going on with free reduced lunch. Sarita's department is well aware of the needs within that because in that department we see the need from our social workers and from all of that. So it is those conversations and that awareness that has led us to say, what is our niche? So there are definitely these other services. Tolson will have its particular place in that community. So we would be saying, what is it that our families are saying that we need? Also the work that's happening through the Thrive initiative through the city and the things that people have been saying in that survey and the information provided there can help inform that. So we would be having conversations with Tolson, with the city, with these other agencies to make sure that we don't duplicate and that we can continue to steer. And Sarita's department and the work that we've been doing with our community partners has been to map those assets and know who does what so that we don't duplicate things.
And are you guys looking to incorporate bigger, I'm not sure if you're aware of the enrollment with the like after school programs and stuff. I know that they've been very much waitlisted. Are you guys looking to increase after-school programs? Because I do think they will be needed for parents, that do depend on, for one, the other children in their home, for instance, older siblings and such, and if that can't take place because of maybe transportation issues or something, is the district looking to work on increasing after-school care and, perhaps before-school care?
We can look at that.
Yeah. So it hasn't been looked at?
Well, we have ESSER funds for after-school activities and things currently within our buildings.
Of course.
But to expand that beyond that into maybe a fuller relationship with Kids Care or Boys and Girls Club or other agents, those are things that we could explore.
Okay, that sounds great. And let's say, so I don't know if you guys are aware of the statistics this year, or last year, more people passed away than were born. Is the district looking at possible low enrollment of the pre-K if there's a lower enrollment? Because I do know there's other resources for pre-K, you know, that is offered in the community and such. I know it seems like maybe a good idea, but if it's not fulfilled, is there an alternative plan for lack of enrollment for the pre-K?
Well, we have our sections that we run ourselves as a district, which are just a few, but our main partner in that is Head Start. So we'll be analyzing with Head Start what are their projections for where that's going to go as we're coming out of the pandemic, and that being pre-K that's available for low-income families, that becomes a way for us to advertise that, and we could become better partners in promoting that and ensuring that if we sort of have a hub of that happening, then we can be offering multiple opportunities.
I see. And what are you doing for the middle-class families that perhaps need pre-K?
Those would be things that we could look at in partnership as we develop this out.
Okay. I know as a middle-class family, we had no options for my son. I mean, he just learned at home. You know, he did score 93 percentile for math and reading, which is pretty high for, you know, a state average. But we just didn't have really any resources, you know, for that. And I will wrap up because I know I've taken up quite a bit of time. I know that there's a raw number of $5 million. Was that study like conducted by Elkhart Community Schools, or have we had bids or like estimates from local contractors and builders?
Do you want to speak to that, or?
Several years ago, we had a long-range facility maintenance plan developed, and our outside consultant helped us to develop the numbers there. And then we update those periodically, usually once every 2 years, because they don't change a whole lot. The current estimate is based upon the work we've done with our local contractors that we work with, primarily the ones that do what would be more of our repair work, but they've also done the construction with us, and we also incorporate the opinions of the architects and engineers we work with. Bill Dremel, who's our manager of building services, and we are both architects by training, and we have extensive experience in construction, design, and
That's all right.
no, that's okay. It's Bill has more experience in property management. I have more experience in construction management. So we come up with the numbers, we run them by our architects and engineers and ask them for their opinions, and then we also ask the local contractors. Right now, it's really hard to say. And the flex in the dollars is one thing. The other great challenge right now is what everybody that, you know, the buzzwords are supply chain.
Of course.
That's a big concern of ours. It's not only do we have the money, but can we get things in a timely manner?
Of course.
That's how we develop those numbers.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys.
Hello, my name is Jason Rodriguez and I'm a student from Hawthorne Elementary School. I've been going to Hawthorne since I was in kindergarten. Now I'm in 5th grade. I want to graduate from Hawthorne and you're taking that away from me. And you're shutting down, and you're taking that away from me. You're shutting down one of our best schools. I searched in Google and it says the ratings of Hawthorne Elementary School is 4.5 stars, while Roosevelt, the new Roosevelt, is 2.9 stars. And Mary Beck is 3.4 and Mary Daly is 3.9 stars. So please get to know our school. I feel sad, angry, frustrated because you're shutting down my school. You're breaking everybody's hearts. Students, teachers, anybody that goes to Hawthorne. We're trying to for Hawthorne Elementary School not to shut down. I recommend all of you, to try to save our school.
Jason, thank you for your comments and for being very brave.
Good evening. I'm Mrs. Mayana, and I'm at my 25th year at Hawthorne Elementary School. It's been the only school that I've been at. All of our students, they're worried, they're scared, they're angry, as you can see, and they have so many questions, and I don't think they understand too much about the dollar and how hard it is to come about, to have the money and the funds that we need. They think it's, just get it. He just asked me, how much money do we need? And I told him, and he said, well, how much money do we have saved up? So just please understand, I guess, we just want you to understand how much pain that, this is all causing us. And I guess I just stood to say something totally different. I decided I wasn't going to speak my heart at all. So sorry for that. I did want to make one comment, though, and I don't know if it's just a warning per se. I've been hearing a lot of people say that, a lot of kids and parents saying that they're going to move to a different district. And that really worries me a lot, because where I know they'll be getting that education they need wherever they go, I'm just so sad that I won't be part of it. And I hope that we don't lose them for that dollar that we need so bad.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Lisa Seals. I am a substitute for Elkhart Community Schools. I've been a substitute teacher since 2012 to 2021, before I got sick with COVID, thank God. I can share firsthand about the kids, the learning criterias, and how they act and what affects them from their home to the school. So I just wrote something down, and I'm gonna read it, and that's all I'm gonna do, because I want you to know how it is from the aspect that I see on a day-to-day with them, from school to school. And also as a black mother, I'm a single black mother. At the time, when I started, my son was in Elkhart schools. So I decided to go to the board meetings and PTA meetings, let it be known that there's a struggle within our kids. So bear with me. I dropped out of public speaking in college. I apologize, should have stayed there. So if I may be honest, many of our black youth, and I'm speaking for black youth because I'm black, obviously. Many of our black youth are struggling in school because, in most cases, at no fault of their own, many of our youth just don't have that hands-on affection, structure, or support at home. Let's face it, the desire with the kids is there, but the time isn't. Many of our black youth students struggle because the home life is depressing. Maybe there's abuse, absent mother and or fathers, stereotypes, and much more. Did you know that grandparents, as she was stating in her earlier statements, are taking on the responsibility of raising grandkids, who, by the way, is already having health issues themselves, which prevents them from outside activities or to attend group supports to fill the void in our young black youth lives. Our black youth needs to gain achievements. Achievements mean communication between the parent and the schools. And that could possibly mean that the child starts to lose interest or fall into a depressed state which interferes with their school work. What I mean by that is most of the schools assume our kids come from a home with two parents and they should set an example. But the problem with that is the reality. The reality is whether there is two parents or not, the structure just isn't there for our Black youth to advance at a level that the school system requires. In essence, leaving our Black youth less likely to succeed. Many of our Black youth struggles to achieve simply because there is no structure inside the home, and this is not only the parents' fault, not only the parents' fault. There seems to be a miscommunication of how the child would or could function at school because of the environment that they are in. While this poses a problem physically, it also dims the light on the possibility of our Black youth achieving and or growing within the means of how education is changing. For example, our Black youth are being raised in a one-parent home, full-time working parents, grandparents, and sadly to say, older kids are in positions of absent parents. If not a guardian over a little sister and or brother, this becomes another assignment for them to do in addition to their home life, in addition to their education. There just isn't enough information for our Black youth to prosper while living in poor condition. And I'm not saying that their homes are not clean and they're filthy. I'm saying that poor condition also means the lifestyle that the guardian is living. Sometimes he or she, they, or whatever the case may be, does not have the time or energy to support our youth's hopes and dreams. Society doesn't see a need for our young Black youth children living in situations such as these. Not enough information to reach out by funding a program that sponsors the well-being of our Black youth. Unfortunately, there is not many options for our Black youth to expand, grow stronger, nor stay alive. In summary, there has to be a change. And that change comes from the parents, the teachers, the faculty, the board members, everyone. No matter how bad it may sound to get the help our youth need, we must speak out. Black parents, we must speak out. Because if we don't speak out, our kids don't have a voice. Our Black youth depends on our voices. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Hello. Sorry. My name is Angelia Washington, and I live across the street from Hawthorne School. My children attended Hawthorne. My youngest daughter is the Assistant Director of Special Projects out of the Office of Civic Engagement for the University of Chicago. I'm proud of her for many reasons, and I'm also proud of the fact that she had attended Hawthorne. All of her academic accomplishments are based on the seeds that were planted at Hawthorne. And I would really hate to see the school leave the community. I know it's a selfish reason. Not only did my daughter attend Hawthorne, but just hearing the children out on the playground playing every day just does something to brighten my day. I do have a question about the feasibility study. I'm sorry, who did you say conducted that?
We're putting out a request for a proposal to do that.
Okay, will there be, when do you believe that will be completed? I don't think I saw that on the slide.
The board and I will be working on that over the next week or so and then making a determination as to when they'll approve that at an upcoming board meeting. And then we would issue that and give time for those firms to get us their quotes and how they would go about the process of doing that.
Okay, once the feasibility study has been completed, will there be additional public input, time for public meetings to discuss the feasibility study?
During that study, yes, they would be seeking information from stakeholders and then from policymakers and everybody to determine the things that would help us best project where enrollment's going to go, what's going to happen with population, and what would be the best utilization of our buildings for programs.
Okay, if the feasibility study proves that it wouldn't be a good move, is there a plan B? What would be the next steps?
So what we're looking at right now and the way the proposal is right now is...
Because we don't have the feasibility study yet.
I'm sorry?
We don't have the feasibility study yet.
Right, so this is a recommendation from the administration based on what we know and the proximity of our buildings and the utilization of where things are. So we're looking at this as a phase one happening with Hawthorne, and then the feasibility study would be looking at things more broadly across the district.
Okay, I thought there was a deadline or a date of implementation date already established?
No,
There's
no,
not?
that has not been established for the feasibility study. Because we're
Okay.
still working on the draft language as the board is determining what the scope of that study would look like.
I mean, as far as moving the students to other school, I thought a date had
Well,
already been set.
This would be us doing this. So Hawthorne Elementary is a decision that we as an administration, and looking at the numbers and looking at the facilities, we're making the recommendation to the board that we do this with Hawthorne at the moment.
Okay, so it's just a recommendation at this point?
Right. And then what would be happening at the same time as we're doing this is that we start looking at the district more broadly, and where it gets much more complicated to think about moving buildings and closing other buildings and what might happen with consolidating middle schools and other questions that have been raised, and to know on a scale where that's going to go. That's the purpose of the feasibility study. So that would be happening in the background as we're
Okay.
doing this, and then that information would come to us probably late summer for us to then determine what would be happening in the next steps.
Okay, and not only is there a staffing crisis for teachers, there's also a staffing crisis, well, for just about any position you can name. But I know Elkhart Community Schools is struggling to get bus drivers. How will students who need to go to school outside of their current district get to school?
So what we're looking at in the way that we're redistributing the students and what we're doing with that is that we're trying to do that within the current routing structure or within the same personnel that we're currently using.
Okay. All right, then my last question, a lot of the questions that I had were already answered, but my last question is, how would moving students out of their current school districts meet with the city's 10-minute neighborhoods? If there's no walkability, they have to be bused to other schools throughout the city.
Well, in the instance of most of the number of students from Hawthorne going to Roosevelt, that's walkable and not as big a distance, and the same otherwise. So it's within the zones and the walk zones that we have already.
Okay.
So it is not outside of that notion of what could generally still be considered a neighborhood school.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions or comments?
Hi, Amy Kindig. I teach at Hawthorne Elementary School, second grade. I guess my question, because I've watched this several times now, is you keep saying that moving students will guarantee that we have smaller class sizes. And I currently am sitting at 27 students. If you take my class of 27 students and move them to, for example, Mary Beck, and you take every class that's in Hawthorne that's overcrowded and move them to one of these 4 schools, you will still have the same hypothetical number of teachers and students. So how are you going to guarantee class sizes of, I think you said 17 or so? Are you only going to reduce class sizes at 1 or 2 of these schools? Are you going to increase the class size limits at the other buildings throughout the district?
As we've looked at the numbers, we've been looking at trying to narrow class sizes for Beck and Roosevelt to the 18 to 20 range, and then have other buildings meet the targets that we've set. And we've been able to, as we've run the numbers the first time, been able to get that to work by how that would work because of some capacity that's available within other buildings.
Okay, because I was just confused how you could possibly
And that's
guarantee the class sizes, and then also how are you going to attract teachers, because we do have classes that have permanent subs. We do have classes that I'm currently sitting in a classroom in my hall where I have subs every day in the other 2 second grade classrooms due to illness. And there are a lot of people in our building who have been out due to illness because we still have a pandemic happening. And a lot of people don't want to teach anymore, sub anymore, because they don't want to get sick or take illness to their families. So how are you going to attract more people? Because the way I see it, you have like 89 teacher postings on the website right now. And if you reduce class sizes, you might need significantly more postings. And you don't have people lining up to take these jobs.
A couple of the things would be is as we've talked about the lower class size being attractive to people to come and teach. Secondly would be in discussions with the association and looking at incentives for teachers. And then one of the other things that we've discussed is what other benefits might we be able to do as we're looking at a pre-K hub or a location for perhaps some child care for employees for their children that would be able to provide the daycare that would be needed for somebody to be able to return to the profession if we were offering that for teachers as well. So those would be things that we can do to try to create those incentives and those attractive benefits to bring people back.
Sure. Okay. And I just had one more question. When you bring buildings back to capacity, like Roosevelt, for example, I worked at Roosevelt for 7 years when they were a K through 2. And so when you bring them back to capacity, are you going to staff them with more behavior support or behavior deans? Are you going to end up having to hire more people for each of these buildings because they are now at capacity? Because currently at Hawthorne, we have been reduced now to 2 administrators. And as a teacher there who occasionally has reasons to have to call the office for assistance, I can barely ever get anyone to answer a phone because they are always busy taking care of behavior needs throughout the building. And if you have more students, you're going to have more behavior needs.
Right. So that's why the assistant principal position would be going somewhere. And then in addition to that, we can look at Title I budgets, and these buildings would all definitely retain their Title I status for us to be able to look at behavior supports and those kind of things. And answering the question about capacity, again, Roosevelt would have room for 800 students. And if we have 470 there currently and we put another 225, 250 with that, we're not near the capacity of the building, but we would look at
You
the number of
recognize that I was
sections.
talking about the maximum number of students that had been there prior, though, and the number of behavior problems that went with that. And so I really wasn't talking about filling every seat in the building or anything like that, in which case you would definitely need even more of those kinds of supports.
Definitely.
So I think that's my
And we're hearing that loud and clear, and the principals that have been in on those conversations, we're very aware of that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy. Okay, last call.
I have 2 questions. Have you already made the decision to shut down our school down?
I have made the recommendation to the school board, but the school board members would make the final decision. And that has not happened. So I work for 7 people who were voted into their office, and they're called the school board. So those 7 people will make the decision based on that. So right now, I'm just saying this is why I think we should do it. And you have to understand, Jason, this does not make me happy to make this recommendation. But what I have to do that for the benefit of the whole school district. And so I'm making the recommendation, and the board would be deciding in one of their meetings. Those 7 people would all vote yes or no as to whether we would do this if we bring that forward.
I have another question. Can our parents raise money to save the school?
Well, for the amount of money that we're looking at, it is an incredibly large amount of money that would be difficult for people to raise. So that's why we haven't considered that option.
Okay. Okay.
Anything else, Jason? If you think of something afterward and you want to come ask me, you're welcome to do that.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Jason. With that, I will thank everyone for coming this evening and for your time and attention. And again, I and the team are here if you would like to come and ask any questions or discuss anything further. And I hope you all have a good evening. Thank you.